Your blood sugar is coming down, you're losing weight, your digestion has finally sorted itself out. But the other thing is, your tastes are starting to change in ways you didn't expect.
Your mind and body are actually big deals. Your brain is the control center of the body, in charge of keeping your heart beating, lungs breathing, and controlling how you move, feel, and think. Your body is the vehicle that carries it around and needs to be in peak working condition to support your mind. Nothing plays a bigger role in maintenance than food. The foods you eat dictate your health and can often enhance already present. But with all the diet fads going around, it's hard to know which one is suited to you. Many of them are harmful and not actually suited to anybody, while others largely depend on body type, genetics, and underlying health conditions. But it isn't as complicated as some like to make it seem. There really is just one thing you need to work against: diabetes. Approximately 537 million adults between the ages of 20 and 79 have diabetes. The total number of people living with diabetes will rise to 643 million by 2030 and 785 million by 2045. Almost 1 in 2 people who have diabetes live undiagnosed. The terrifying facts and figures don't end there. Last year, diabetes caused expenses of nearly $966 billion. 1.2 million children and adolescents have it, and it causes 6.7 million deaths a year.
This is diabetes. It is not your imagination. It is getting a lot worse.
And it doesn't look like the problem is going away anytime soon. It is essentially an epidemic. Despite all the cutting-edge tech and medication at our disposal, we still see cases skyrocketing. Why? 3 reasons. 1. The gradually changing profile of people getting diagnosed. Recently, more young adults have been entering the group, and they have high rates of obesity, smoking, and a sedentary lifestyle. In addition to that, they have higher blood pressure and cholesterol levels for their age, which all contribute to an early onset of various complications. More and more type 2 diagnoses are coming from the non-white populations too, predominantly in Asia. The increase in numbers of diabetic cases can have a lot to do with the type of people developing it. Second, the possible inadvertent relaxation of blood sugar targets in young adults. Intense blood sugar control can cause low blood sugar, also called hypoglycemia, which is dangerous for older adults. When clinics and pharmas shifted toward less stringent blood sugar management guidelines in the late 2000s, with an eye on preventing low blood sugar in older patients, it might have had unintended consequences for blood sugar management in young adults. The third and final factor is broader and more socioeconomic. According to studies, the complication rate reversal happened after the economic recession of 2008, when high-deductible health plans added financial barriers to preventative care. Variations in insurance coverage of healthcare services, plus the skyrocketing costs of insulin and newer medications, may have likewise contributed to the rising complication rates.
People are eating these foods everywhere, and you just add that up and you're automatically in the high-risk group.
High sugar is also a contributing factor in Alzheimer's and cognitive impairment as we get older. So what do? You go on diets. No sugar, low sugar, no carbs, smoothies, keto, water cleanses, juice cleanses. There's no end to it. But it's not that simple. Dr. Neal Barnard cites a brilliant example of why simply cutting out sugar won't help with obesity or improve health.
Take a look at Japan. In Japan, you have the skinniest people, the longest-lived people on the planet. What's the dietary staple of Japan? Huge amounts of rice for breakfast, lunch, dinner. And if you look at diabetes in Japan, in adults over the age of 40, before 1980, diabetes was rare, 1 to 5% of the population. But what happened in Japan right around 1980?
In the 1980s, McDonald's in Japan became more and more mainstream. Their fat intake started to go up, and their carbohydrate intake started to go down. By the year 1990, diabetes in Japan was at 11 to 12%. What do we learn from this? Well, 1, diabetes is not caused by eating rice. 2, diabetes is definitely not genetic, at least not for the most part. The gene that dictates diabetes is not a dictator gene, like the one that makes you have blue eyes or black hair. The diabetes gene, in essence, stays dormant unless activated. But let's go back to America, where we have a meat-rich diet instead of a carb-rich diet.
Meat-based diet. And in 1909, the Department of Agriculture started tracking what we eat, and meat intake rose, especially in the post-World War II period, and hit an all-time high in 2004.
Now, the natural assumption here is that it's a lack of exercise that is causing obesity. Because if carbs and sugar aren't the culprits, then it must be us. We're the problem. We're the reason it's happening. But it's not. That's not the problem.
Exercise is great. But the reason for obesity and the reason for the diabetes epidemic and other things I'm going to talk to you about is because we are eating in a way that human beings never ate in the history of this planet.
So what's the solution? Usually, doctors will provide a prescription for blood pressure, diabetes, and so forth. But Dr. Barnard has another idea. The foods you eat change viscosity. It's like the oil you use in your car engine. Almost the same principle applies to blood. Your blood can be viscous, which is thick like oil, or be thinner, like water. And you want your blood to be thin like water. When you eat meat, lard, oil, and cheese, your blood viscosity goes up and raises your blood pressure, forcing you to take pills. So now that we know the problem, we can find a solution. A study conducted by Dr. Barnard required participants to be on a specific diet. There were no restrictive, dull, or bland foods to contend with. For breakfast, you could have blueberry pancakes or oatmeal with cinnamon, or you could stick to half a cantaloupe or a rye toast. Lunch was vegetable chili and a garden salad with sesame dressing. And dinner was a lentil soup and linguine with artichoke hearts. There was to be no calorie counting or carb counting either. The results?
At 14 weeks, the average person had lost 13 pounds. Their waist dropped by 2 inches, and their insulin sensitivity improved, which we measure with glucose tolerance testing.
They also tracked the participants for another 2 years and compared them to a group kept on a diet of fish and meat. And it turns out they didn't do as well as the first group. Dr. Barnard later got funding to do this test for people with type 2 diabetes, and he went with a plant-based diet. Again, this was without the restrictions and conventional carb and calorie counting. The study spanned 22 weeks at a time with 99 people. They tracked hemoglobin A1C in these people to measure their success, and this level should remain below 7 if you have diabetes.
So the red line was the conventional diet. They had a nice drop down to 7.5. The people on the vegan diet, no calorie counting, no carb limits at all, they were free to eat as much as they wanted, had this massive drop, just on average of more than 1.2 absolute percentage points on A1C, which is not only better than any other diet that's ever been tested, but better than any oral diabetes medication that we had available too.
Seems simple enough, right? It may not be the case initially, of course. In the beginning, it will feel like an uphill battle, but soon, you will get used to it. Dr. Barnard talks about how those who have switched from dairy to skim or almond milk have never gone back, because they now prefer the lighter taste as opposed to the thick, creamy taste of full-fat dairy milk.
For your whole life, it was fine. But if you're not tasting it, for about a 3-week period, your taste buds physically change, and they prefer the lighter taste.
And again, the diet doesn't have to be restrictive, and you don't have to count your calories or weigh yourself every day. It just comes down to having a few select go-to meals that nourish you and taste good at the same time.
So that's why we do it this way. If you want transition foods like the veggie burger instead of the meat burger, or instead of Jimmy Dean, there's Gimme Lean.
Moreover, the biggest studies concerning the causes of cholesterol, high blood pressure, and diabetes are funded by companies that have their own agenda. If a study tells you that butter is good for you, and you should eat more of it, there is a high chance that the study was funded by a company that makes butter. Dr. Barnard is clear that a plant-based diet is the best thing. He mentions the benefits of a vegan diet for heart disease in another talk.
More than 2 decades ago, we found that it can actually be reversed. What I mean is the arteries can open up again.
He suggests that we do with food what we did with smoking. We have banned smoking everywhere, in offices, airplanes, airports, restaurants, cafes, universities. We go the extra mile to isolate the smokers in separate lounges to keep them away from non-smokers. The idea is ingrained into society, and so the people who needed the extra push to quit had a reason to quit, because smoking had just become too inconvenient. In the same way, Dr. Barnard suggests making healthy eating a part of the culture. Businesses, schools, and other institutions should become part of the cause to provide that extra push. The process needs to include insurance companies as allies too. And slowly but surely, this, like non-smoking areas, will become the norm. There is a lot of conflicting advice out there, especially because most of the studies are pushing a personal agenda and trying to sell you pills and products. The best medicine, according to Dr. Barnard, is nutrition. It can reverse diabetes and high blood pressure, and it can thin your blood and better your cognitive and physical functions again. But the focus has to be on what you eat, not on temporary fixes with medicines. Which means, yes, you will have to start making some significant changes to the life you've gotten comfortable with. But soon enough, you'll get used to milk alternatives and plant-based meat substitutes. And soon enough, just like smoking, once you do it for 21 days, you won't ever want to go back. If you'd like to view the entire talk, click on the link in the description. And if you want to stay motivated to be your best self, both physically and mentally, go ahead and subscribe to our channel for more. And make sure you click the bell icon to be notified when we upload. Thanks for watching.